So the outrage continues to grow and grow over this whole Epstein thing. And I've tried over several videos to kind of, I mean, I have no reach, so obviously nothing I say is going to mean anything right now. Maybe if my channel grows at some point, I'll actually have some impact on the discourse. But if I continue putting out videos that are calling for temperance and things like that, maybe some people will at least adjust their perspective on this whole thing. While it's absolutely true that you should continue trying to find the truth on any specific issue that you care about, there's a difference between seeking out truth in an earnest manner and going on a witch hunt because you believe you didn't get what you were supposed to get. One of the things that you learn when you deal with the government on any regular basis is that there's a lot of incompetence there. I mean, the reality is that a lot of people who go into government work because they can't make it in the private sector. So they need a job where they can get paid to do something that's not really that hard. And, just like government work, for the most part, for many people is the fallback position because they weren't able to figure out how to make a living on their own out in the real world. And the government provides them with a job and a security and all those things that they want. And, we've all heard the stories about how hard it is to get fired from the freaking government, right? Like, it's really, really hard to do that. Why do I bring this up? It's because I've been making the case over several videos that a lot of this, to me, given, my service in the military and my time with the government, just sounds like the typical stupidity and incompetence that you encounter at all levels of government service. I mean, the military, I think, in general, has a much better competency level than most sectors of the government just because, we're dealing with life and death stuff, and you can't, obviously, at my particular field, I didn't. I could have, but I didn't. But for the most part, military leadership doesn't have a time and patience for bullshit. At least as far as, things that are going to get people killed, especially the further we go into the future and we learn from our mistakes. So if you're in the military, like I was, you didn't see nearly as much of it as you probably see at some of these federal government agencies, but you still saw it. I mean, I can think of several leaders that I had during my time in the Marine Corps where, you know what I mean? Officers that I had contact with that, every other day you're going, what? These are people with degrees who are officers in the Marine Corps, officers in military service. So you're just going like, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing? What is this? This is stupid, right? And if that's in the military, which, generally doesn't have a lot of tolerance and room for incompetence, imagine what the rest of the federal government is like. Imagine what the rest of the federal... I've dealt with government agencies and, once I left the Marine Corps, I had to deal with government agencies via construction stuff. And, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. You have some people who do a really good job and they're on top of things. And then everyone else is just drawing a paycheck. Okay? So I bring all of this up because most of what I see on the internet, as far as videos that are being published, stories about this particular topic that are trying to cover things, are making it sound like there's this massive conspiracy. But when I look at the circumstances of everything, I can only see incompetence. People who don't know what they're doing, making claims about things they don't have any information on. I'm talking about government people. These government people who are saying things to us, right? Like Pam Bondi is talking about things in a file she hasn't even read, and then she's saying things. And then she's misinterpreting what people are saying about those things, responding to them based off of her already assumed, thought about how they were going to approach the question. And then you get this confusion about a list versus just files, right? It's a massive series of things like that when you approach it from there's a conspiracy going on mindset, of course you're going to draw the line, from one end to the other. But if you start from the assumption and if you have actual experience with the federal government of any kind, it starts to become much more believable that it's just people that suck at their jobs. I mean, there's so many government jobs now. The federal government is such a massive organization, and it's rife with incompetence. At the highest levels of government, it's rife with incompetence. And then again, the other side of what I really want people to I really want you, if you're not already just completely consumed by this whole Epstein thing, to just stop for a second and think about what they were saying, and when they were saying it. Okay, you have Dan Bongino and freaking Kash Patel talking all this crap about how they need to release the Epstein files, and you have Vice President Vance, before he was elected, talking about, yeah, they need to release the Epstein client list. But the problem is that none of those people actually had access to any information before they took office. They just assumed, like everyone else did, that there was a conspiracy, that there was evidence, that there was all of this stuff. And then they take office, and then their tune changes, and everybody feels like it's just them. Oh, they got consumed by the system. It's like, okay, but at least consider the possibility that maybe the government was telling the truth this whole time. There wasn't actually any incriminating information in any of the documentation that people found. And then these zealots who came into office saying, we're going to crash it all over. They walk in, they look, read the file, and they're like, oh, fuck. There's nothing here. Now we're going to look fucking stupid. So let's figure out a way we can get out of this with our reputations intact. I mean, that's at least as likely as this grand conspiracy that everybody's afraid of. Okay? Yes, there has absolutely been corruption in our government. And it's almost always not some grand design to fuck over the American people. It's almost always somebody going after something selfish that they wanted for themselves, whether it's, Kennedy trying to do the Bay of Pigs thing to score a win over communism so he can take credit for it, or Nixon allowing his cronies to run around and break into buildings to try to get things done, and he has to take the blame for it. Whether it's, Bush trying to extract something out of the Middle East while trying to convince the rest of us that there's like, that's not really like a cabal of people trying to do evil stuff in the world. It's just selfish government people trying to take something for themselves, and they just don't care that they're fucking people over. That's really all it is. If you are following this idea of government conspiracy, I honestly believe you're giving these people way more credit than they deserve. You are assuming they have a level of competence that I've never seen any evidence of anywhere in the government, ever. Not once in my entire life. These people are just as stupid and ignorant as the rest of us are. They're regular people, just like you and me. The reason why we get into these problems isn't because you have these evil genius people going around trying to do these things. It's selfishness and stupidity, and they're trying to just cover their ass. It really, really boils down to that. Most of the time, it boils down to that. So, as I've said before, the whole Epstein thing is a horrible tragedy that, really should have been caught way before it ever got caught. And I think we all agree that we don't ever want stuff like that happening again, and there needs to be justice for the people who were involved in that. But it does nobody any good to jump on this bandwagon of outrage trying to find information that probably isn't there. Because you're assuming that, A, Epstein was stupid enough to document anything, right? Like, everybody thinks that he wanted blackmail on all these people. Maybe, but if he had that information, he didn't keep it somewhere where he thought anybody would be able to find it. It's hidden away somewhere, like I said, like the CIA would do. I almost guarantee the government has no information that Epstein actually kept records of, because he hid it in a cave somewhere, because he's not stupid enough to leave it where they're going to come and raid one of his properties and then they find it. He did 20 years of this shit, and you think he made it 20 years by being dumb, right? He wasn't a government employee. He was actually, somebody who figured out a way to manipulate billionaires into giving him lots of money. Clearly, he was intelligent and actually competent, which means he's not going to be the kind of person who does something stupid like leave a client list somewhere. And if he did, he put it somewhere where he knew nobody would be able to find it. He gave it to somebody that the government wouldn't follow. I mean, you have to assume that he thought that he was being watched all the time. I have to imagine he was being extremely careful about the things he was doing. And the only reason anybody ever found out about it is because the victims came out and said something. Right? So my contention to you is that it's just as likely as not that there's nothing there. Not because the documentation doesn't exist, but because the people who could have gotten in trouble over these things, whether it's in the government or Epstein himself, put that stuff somewhere where you're never going to find it, because they didn't want you to find it, because they didn't want to leave anything, they didn't want to leave breadcrumbs out there to be found. And for the rest of it, yeah, you have a right to be mad at the government for promising you something and then not delivering. But let's be real about why they're not delivering. I firmly think that it's not because they know there's something and they're trying to, join this conspiracy of people trying to cover things up. Somebody in the government, we've had so many whistleblowers over the years, somebody in the government would step forward with that stuff, given how important it is. Somebody would. Some disgruntled person, one of the few people who have the courage to stand up and speak out against things, would take that documentation, bring it out and give it to us. We've had enough whistleblowers who have basically sacrificed their lives to bring us important information like this. And for something like this, I have to imagine that somebody would do it too. You can disagree, that's fine, but if the information was there, somebody would have got a hold of it and released it and leaked it. We've had so many freaking leaks over the years about various different things that somebody would have leaked something by now. Somebody. So there's probably nothing there. People made promises they didn't know they could keep. And now we're all losing our minds over it instead of just saying, you know what, you guys suck. Why did you if you didn't know what you were talking about, then why were you promising these things? You can get mad at them for that. I'm not trying to say you shouldn't be upset with the government for not providing what they said they were going to provide. My point is this conspiracy theory path that we're going down. Because this is like the whole McCarthy thing all over again, right? We see shadows, we think that something's happening, and then we start to go in this witch hunt for things that A, wastes a lot of time, B, upsets people for no reason, and C, causes us to further make our distrust of government way worse than it needs to be outside of just, oh, well, yeah, that's typical government incompetence. Just try. Try to pull back from the conspiracy stuff. Try not to listen to everybody who's trying to, because you have to understand the social media and public media economy. It benefits them to paint the situation in the worst possible light that they can, because if they're bringing up an outrage, people are going to watch. And then they make money. And that's how it works. Keep in mind that just as easy as it is to believe in a conspiracy and our government trying to do these things, it's just as likely, if not more likely, that everybody's jumping on this bandwagon and not really putting too much thought into it because it's easy to just attack the government and take the money. It's the way it works. It's the way it works. So, I'm trying to bring a level of rationality to this whole topic. It's easy. It's easy to allow yourself to fall into the fantasy that there's this cabal of government officials out there trying to, control the world and do all of these things. I'm sorry, but history has shown that most of these people, there's very few people in the world who have the competence to actually do anything meaningful in the world by themselves, much less group together and try to do something. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Most of these people are out for number one. They're trying to get power and influence for themselves. They're not working together on this stuff. They're really not. Maybe a little bit on some things, but not to this level. Come on. It's just, I don't know. I don't know how to put this out there in a way other than just ask questions. Absolutely. I would never advocate you don't ask questions. It's the outrage that is just, when somebody comes to you with bullshit, you don't lose your mind and get angry about it. You start asking questions that reveal the bullshit. That's how it works. The moment you start losing your mind, you're basically just doing you're basically just wasting your time, because you're not going to get anywhere with your outrage, right? You need to ask questions. You have to say, oh, there's nobody in the list. Okay, well, can we see the documentation that shows us that there's no incriminating evidence in all of this stuff? And then they give you documentation, and you say, seems like this is missing something here. Where's the documentation that this references, right? And then slowly over the course of time, as you logically analyze these documents that you're being given, you start asking for specific things, and then you start to realize that they're not giving you everything. But until you do that, right? And here's the thing. No matter how long it takes you to do that, that's the process you have to do. Because the moment you start going the outrage route, then you're not going to get anything done anymore. Because now people don't care about the facts. They just care about, they don't care. Okay? So I know this is a very long video, but the purpose of this video is avoid conspiracies, okay? Until we get some kind of actual evidence that there's some kind of conspiracy, it's all just conjecture. There's nothing real to it until there's something real to it. So if you are super interested in this case, then you go and find the information that you want. Stop waiting on the government to give it to you, because they're not, either they've already given everything they have, or they're just not going to give you the parts that you really want. So you got to go find it. If you really care that much, you go find it. And if you don't, then maybe shut up. So that's all I wanted to say. Thanks for watching. Be sure to click the like button, subscribe to help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers, and I'll see you for the next one.